we had a case study, and our lady's name is Cynthia. She is a 71-year-old female, and she presented with complaints of vertigo, visual and gait compromise, difficulty thinking, difficulty finding words, difficulty planning and problem solving. The MRI, EEG, and the CFS were all unremarkable. So that ruled out our ideas of a tumor. And the medical records indicated early stages of dementia, and then the repeated MoCA scores, they were done 16 days apart, and there was a drastic change from 24 to 17 within those 16 days.
So she was admitted to the hospital last evening with complaints of a worsening symptoms. She had mild spasticity. She was also experiencing difficulty with walking and her balance. And she also had continued deterioration in her speech and swallowing, which caused her to want to come back to the hospital.
So we looked at differentiating and identifying characteristics of various dementias and compared them to the symptoms that Cynthia presented with and determined that she had vascular dementia. So we considered that very sudden onset, her declining MoCA scores, the global effects, impaired gait, vertigo, balance issues, and her mild spasticity, as well as these. And the Mayo Clinic differentiated vascular dementia from Alzheimer's dementia by explaining another characteristic pattern of vascular dementia symptoms sometimes follows a series of strokes or mini strokes. In this pattern, changes in your thought processes occur in noticeable steps downward from your previous level of function, unlike the gradual, steady decline that typically occurs in Alzheimer's disease.
So let's talk about Cynthia. How we would sit down and explain to her husband and her how we would sit down and explain to them what this diagnosis means. So we would want to emphasize the fact that it is a degenerative disease, that she's not going to get better, because we want them to have a clear understanding of that and not have expectations of improvement, because it may not occur. We would also want to tell them what they should expect as things go on. So she should expect to have global spasticity. She will eventually not be able to walk. She may run into mutism, and she may experience problems with swallowing, so dysphagia. This is a very sad diagnosis, I'll be honest. And so throughout this entire process and talking with them, we would want to, make sure that they know they have support and ensure that we are empathetic and understanding throughout the entire process.
So we're taking the holistic approach. Some of the other tests that we would do would be the aphasia battery, because considering her difficulties with word finding and the diagnosis of vascular dementia, we chose to investigate this possible area. And then we'd also want to define aphasia for her. And basically, from the ASHA website, they defined it as aphasia is a communication disorder that results from damage to parts of the brain that contain language, typically the left half of the brain, as we all know. And then individuals who experience damage to the right side of the brain have additional difficulties with speech and language problems. So we want to just kind of put that at her level. Also, we'd want to do a bedside swallow evaluation, because she's having problems with dysphagia, and we want to take the holistic approach. And it would also help determine if a modified barium study would be warranted.
So after speaking with them about the diagnosis and some of the assessments that we would want to do with them, we would want Cynthia and her husband to leave with some immediate recommendations, especially some that would facilitate better communication between them, or just continue to encourage that. So we would also, within our discussion, let them know that this is not a disease where we will be teaching Cynthia any new skills or new information, but our hope is to maintain the skills that she does have for as long as possible. So our first recommendation would be to continue to encourage participation in normal social activities, both outside and inside the home. So if she goes to a book club once a week, we definitely want her to continue that. We would just recommend that, if possible, they modify the environment. So decrease distractions. There's music or TV on in the background if they're in someone's home, just to try and quiet that down, all that good stuff. We would want to reduce the demand within conversation. So especially her husband, but any other frequent communication partners, we would ask them to use closed set questions when asking her questions. So I know this example's been used a few times, but if he's asking her what she wants for dinner, asking if rather than saying, what do you want for dinner, saying, would you like pizza or spaghetti tonight?
So since we are trying to maintain what she has, one problem that she's been having is her problem solving. And so we want to keep that function that she does have, though. So a goal that we could create for her is that she will be presented with a challenge and will demonstrate the ability to list 3 possible solutions to this challenge when she's given what the outcome is supposed to be. And this will be measured by SLP data collection. And then we would also want to maintain communication skills by initiating conversation with her husband at least 3 times daily, and that will be measured by spousal report.
So an activity to address the first goal would be presenting Cynthia with 5 scenarios in which the initial challenge and desired outcomes are provided by the SLP, and she'll be asked to provide 3 possible solutions to the outcome. So for example, if she's making cookies and she has a party to go to, and she wants to make chocolate chip cookies, but she's out of chocolate chips, what are some possible solutions? We came up with asking a neighbor if they have extra chocolate chips, going to the store buying chocolate chips, or just changing the type of cookie that she makes. So those are something that she could come up with and that we help her with.
Our second activity is more compensatory, introducing her to a compensatory strategy. So that second goal focused on getting her to continue to initiate conversation with her husband. So we determined that some of her difficulties may be in generating topics to talk to him about. So we would introduce her to a list of possible conversational topics that she could have with her husband. So asking him how his day was, what he would like for dinner, talking to her husband about how family members are doing, which I think would be really important to keep her, especially if they have grandchildren or children, just to be able to keep up on their lives as much as possible. Discuss planning a date together, asking about current events. So just, again, keeping up that conversation, maintaining her ability to have her communication skills and her ability to have conversation. And, of course, we would have a conversation with her husband about just keeping his end as simple as possible. So not to overwhelm her with her verbose answers to her questions or anything like that.
So today we've discussed how we would sit down and talk with Cynthia and her husband, what goals we may provide, what additional assessments we would like to cover, and then also just definitely describing and defining to them what this diagnosis means. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
As far as I know, we've left nobody out, correct?